Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Visionary Dawn podcast. I'm your host, Huber, with my co-host.
Meanie. Nice to be back, man. Sorry I missed last week's.
All right. And today we got Matthew Dennion, the author of Atomic Rex, on with us tonight.
So, guys, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be on here. I know you had some of my friends, so I hope I can follow in their footsteps and be entertaining and informative for your following. So we'll see.
Sweet. I'm glad you came on. So my first question I was going to ask you is, how did you get started as a writer?
That's a good question. So I'll give you like the mid version instead of the super long version. So I got started actually. I'm 43, so I'm a little bit older than most of the friend base that we have. And growing up, my parents were divorced, and we didn't have cable. So in the summer, my brother and I would like not have a lot to do. Sort of like cat in the hat, we play sports unless it was raining. So when that occurred, we just started trying to write like fan fiction for each other to entertain ourselves. And like I'd write something for him to read, he'd write something for me to read. So it was just like a way to help keep us entertained, more or less. And I do have some of those early stories, and they're terrible now when I look back at them. But we learn and grow. But then to when I really began writing, like as an author, I had started out where I do work as a special educator, and I have a master's degree in education. So when I was writing my thesis, because I needed to write a thesis for my master's, I found that I couldn't just switch over from writing my thesis to taking a break and watching TV and then get back into writing my thesis because it was too much of a high level of thinking. Ironically, my thesis is on something called behavioral momentum. And basically the idea of that is if you start out doing something that is highly involved, but you enjoy, and then switch over to something similar you might not enjoy as much, there's a lot of research to show that it carries over from doing something you enjoy to something you don't enjoy as much as a better product. So I thought I'll just start trying to write these kind of like fictional stories for fun, and then use that as my break for my thesis, but also use that what I was writing my thesis on and behavioral momentum to carry over. So the first thing I did was just there was a website called Shadow Sanctum, like the old noir pulp fiction character, the Shadow.
Yeah.
And I started just writing stories for them because they had open submissions, and they caught on there like fairly well, which I didn't think they would. I was just kind of doing it to fill time. From there, I was noticed by anthology called Tales of the Shadow Men, which publishes out of France. And typically what they do is take public domain characters like your Sherlock Holmes, your Arsène Lupins, those kind of guys, and write short stories about them. So the guy had seen what I did with the Shadow, and he said, would you be interested in trying out for this anthology? So I had said that I would, and it's been, excuse me, 7 years since then. Stupid dogs. And I still keep running for them. After that, I had a story that I couldn't send to them because it just wasn't a spot for it. And it involved the Amazing Colossal Man taking on Daimajin from the Daimajin trilogy, which I submitted to GFan. And GFan picked it up, and I began writing for them additionally. From that point on, like my wife told me, like, oh, you should write a book. And I was like, nobody wants to read a book I write about an original character. I really didn't think so. So she believed me when I did not. And I was reading Jeremy Robinson's Project Nemesis, the fantastic series, by the way, for any Kaiji fans. I'm sure you guys are well aware of it. And at the back of the book, he had a request for future novels that if anybody would like to send in artwork, he'd be glad to publish it. And I can't draw to save my life. I can barely handwrite. But I thought, maybe I can do a story. So I reached out to him and said, hey, I do write for GFan magazine. They have their mascot, Gfantis. I said, would you be interested if I did like a short story with Gfantis taking on Nemesis and we put it in the magazine? It would be like great cross promotion. So like Nemesis would hopefully be noticed by the target fan base, which, would be GFan. And then, hopefully some of his fans would pick up the story and know what GFan was. So he was thrilled with the idea. He let me write the story, went back, tuned it up. We've been friends since then, which is very cool. And when that worked out, I thought I'm going to reach out to a few other authors for kaiju books I've been writing, see if I can help them out as well. So we did a few other stories, one of which with K.H. Kohler, who wrote the book Raiju. And when I was working with her, she had suggested that her company was looking for more kaiju novels in Severed Press. So again, like I didn't think I would get one published, a novel, but at this point I was like, I might as well give it a shot. So I wrote Chimera and was surprised that Severed Press picked it up. They really liked it. They asked me what else I had, and then it just became like within a year I did 4 novels for them. So Operation Rock was the second one that did well. Followed up by Atomic Rex, and I was like actually in the middle of writing my next book after Atomic Rex, and I got the email from them that whatever you're doing, plan for the next Atomic Rex to be your next book, and then tie it into whatever the hell else you can. So I was like, oh, okay. And then we got the sales numbers in, and it just sold like crazy. And I think it was like people could tell it's like a Godzilla homage, especially with the giant turtle on the front. Is like, this is me having Godzilla fight every monster that I never got to see him fight that I wanted to, just redone in a way that's going to be copyright free and like be a little bit more original. So that went really well from there. And since then, I was recently picked up by Raventail Publishing, which is a very large publisher that has branched off from the Western publishing that they do. And this one's picking up steam a lot. So they've been very supportive of my work. And I think we've already done 5 novels in under a year with a new one coming out like as early as next week, maybe. We'll see. But I hope that wasn't too long an answer, but that's the backstory.
No, detailed answers are best answers. In my own opinion for it. And honestly, it makes a lot more sense now just commenting on your, what you've already accomplished. The behavioral momentum, was it?
Yes.
Specifically? Okay. Wanted to make sure I got the title right. But it was that having been your working thesis for it does kind of explain how you're getting 4 and 5 novels out of here. I feel like you might have cracked something a little bit there.
Yeah, I think I tapped into something here. Yeah. So it still helps me out as an educator. I'm constantly writing lesson plans, behavior modification plans, and I've currently been like promoted to a point where I do a work-based learning coordinator, which means like I place students in potential jobs, special needs students, but they all require plans written for them too. So I'm writing all the time. And like you said, I just continue that behavioral momentum thing of working on plans. I need a half-hour break. We're doing another chapter. Then it's working on plans. I need a half-hour break. We're doing another chapter type of thing.
Nice. I have actually just mild notice for myself with that as well as just kind of pivoting is what it was referred to for getting tasks and stuff done for it in the past. And so that very similar conceptually, I think, and honestly, I have actually seen some success with it. I might need to up it a bit and see how my writing schedule does. Hold on. Did you have a question, Nick?
Yeah, actually, I did. I was together. The thing I was also going to say is that's very interesting on like how your thing works with like staying on task. Like again, I think you did actually crack something to add something. My friend said because me and him both struggle with that thing of like trying to like be consistent
right
as we can. Because we all have like a crazy like we're trying to do something where it's like our works that we do now is like our side thing, but we have like our main jobs, and it's a lot to balance and stuff. So you're definitely onto something, I think, what you came up with.
Yeah, it helps out, and then I try to make it like I do my exercise routine. So like I do like 100 push-ups a day, write 1,000 words a day. If I happen to throw that 1,000 words out, it's okay. Maybe that just isn't going to work. But I find if I stay on that kind of track, it helps me to keep up a fairly decent pace. With turning out work in terms of books. I shouldn't say work in terms of books. And And also, I find like when it's part of my routine, it doesn't become like a thing that like, oh, I got to find time to do this. Just like, hey, it's this time of the day. I got to do this section right now, type of thing.
Most definitely. I've having a routine, being able to set in your creative work as part of your daily routine for it, I think is definitely a good is the major first step you take when you want to pursue it professionally at any level. Professionally just meaning you'll get money for it.
Right. Yes.
Honestly, at that end. I've always personally loved Stephen King's analysis on that. He's like, if you wrote something, made money on it, paid a bill, congratulations.
Yeah, that's
you made it. That's the minimum apparently, and that's been I've seen a lot of just inspiration from that for it, but it's a lot of the realization that it is word by word, day by day. You need to take it step by step,
right.
Kind of as you go. With the one of the big questions I have for your writing, because I haven't been able to read your works personally, but for the novels and stuff, when you're working those out, again, you're working on a scale with a publisher. Are you and you said you're still teaching full time, or?
Yeah, full time. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So definitely with that, how much I would say, like, how much planning do you feel like goes into the actual plot storyline kind of stuff that sticks versus kind of how much you it grew as you went along?
So for each book that I write, I kind of just have like a very loose outline in my head. Like the best way I can compare it to would be in another storytelling realm of like in professional wrestling, where like two wrestlers might go into a match saying, we want to hit like these 4 spots in the match. And then it's just a matter of like figuring out how we're going to get there. So for the most part, that's kind of what I do. Like I'll determine there's usually like some key things I want to cover, whether it would be like, I think a neat fight or a neat plot point to cover. I'll like have those in my head that I want to get there, and then just kind of like start writing and see where the story takes me. On occasion, it has taken me in a completely different route than I had originally thought that I would do. As an example, when I was first writing my book Chimera, there's a character in there called Allison who's like a nymph, and she was supposed to be a minor character that only was in the first third of the book. But as I was writing the book, I started to think like I really like this character as like a manipulator, that kind of behind the scenes villain who's moving stuff around. So I ended up expanding her over the first book, and then she's extended in to other books across my series. I'm also very pleased that like a lot of times I'll get a review for a new book, and one of the top things you write, even though she's not in the title or anything, is Allison's back. She's not down for the count. She's still coming. So I'm glad that the fan base seems to have liked that too. But I have told people before, when I'm giving talks about being a writer or speaking, is that I feel, and it's different for everybody, that sometimes it's okay to let the story take you in the direction that it needs to go, if that makes any sense, right? And I use that example. Like I was not planning to use this character much, but it became clear as I was writing that there was a lot that could be done with that character. So I did amends not where I was going with the story, but more the path that I took to get there, to incorporate this character in.
Okay. Awesome. And it's, there's a lot of, especially in the college realm, when you get there for it, when you're, learning different writing techniques and all the history and all the basics and stuff to it. There, we end up with the, do we want to plan everything versus do you just let it go? And like you said, sometimes you just need to follow the rabbit hole and see where it takes you. And I think, just like you said, you'll find stuff that, fans will come back for that you never saw coming.
Right. And I do tell people too, it depends on what works best for you. So like as an educator, it's my job to find what the best way for students to learn is. So some students learn in one particular manner best and other students in a different manner. I say it's the same thing with writing. I'm friends with some writers who need to have like a complete outline point by point about what they're going to do and follow it from start to finish. And for them, that's absolutely the way that they should do it. For me, it doesn't work that way. I'm more of like a free flow guy. But I would tell people, like, if you're planning to be a writer, try experimenting a little bit. Try doing a full outline. Okay, see if that works for you. Or maybe you're just more of a person who goes with the flow type of thing, and maybe that works for you too. There's no like right answer. It's whatever is going to be most effective for you and help you to most effectively tell the story you're looking to tell.
Awesome.
Yeah. And that leads to my next question I was going to ask, since we're on the topic of Atomic Rex. So all through the first time I went to G-Fest, I've heard of Atomic Rex. Actually, the funny thing, it was Frank Parr back in you might remember this, 2010. He had a big art piece, and it had like Arrakis, his guy, Young Gary, Manda. It was just a line art piece, and he had like a table and stuff. I guess it's before he became like the head of the artist alley, I guess.
Yeah.
And I saw this T-Rex looking guy, or like it reminded me actually of a Giganosaurus a little bit, like the way it looked. But yeah, it was like a T-Rex. He was green. He had some spines on him, and I was like, oh, like who's this guy? Like I was kind of confused. I was like, oh, I haven't seen the dinosaur before. Who's this guy? It's like, oh, that's Atomic Rex. That's Matt's creation. I was like, oh, okay. And then as the years went on, I started to see more and more of him kind of being, brought up. So my question is like, explain to the audience who like Atomic Rex is, or what's the origin behind this guy?
Okay, well, that's actually a funny story. So the origin of Atomic Rex is I had done Chimera, Scourge of the Gods, and Operation Iraq for Separate Press, and in like a short 6-month span, and they said, we won another one. What else do you got? And I was like, man, I do not know like what else I'm going to do. So I thought, what I'm going to do is like a story with a Godzilla stand-in, and I'm going to have it incorporate every monster I wanted to see Godzilla fight, but never got to see him fight. So for whatever reason, or a stand-in for them. And the idea was I'm going to set it in basically a world where we lost Pacific Rim. So like the idea of Pacific Rim where monsters attack, but humans lose. And it sets up this spot where basically North America is where we start in book 1, where different kaiju have carved out the continent for themselves in different areas. So think like Monster Island from Destroy All Monsters, where like each monster kind of had like their little section and for the most part stayed away from each other.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Oh, I said like their own territory.
Yeah, their own territories, exactly. And each monster had their own territory, and humanity was forced into like one small little desolate wasteland. They did have a pilot with one mech left who basically protects them from not the kaiju or true kaiju as I call them, but mutants, where like because these monsters are walking around, they're giving off ambient radiation that mutates like bugs and rodents and things into basically commonplace giants, but that are still a threat to humanity that this mech can handle, but he can't beat the true kaiju. And the true kaiju were set up where Atomic Rex is they were on an island that was filled with dinosaurs, bombs dropped on it, kind of 1950s-ish feel to it. And then they come out from the island. So Atomic Rex was a T-Rex. And basically I gave him like a bigger upper body and longer arms. So he's more like a man in a suit type of look to him. But he does have that theropod hunched over look. Additionally, like I tried to put like an alligator caprice on his back. And instead of like a nuclear breath, gave him like a dome of energy can come off, like in Dragon Ball Z when Goku powers up, when you get like that dome of energy comes off. And then the other monsters, like on the cover, you'll see the alligator snapping turtle.
Yeah, that's the one trying to eat me.
He's trying to eat you. Watch out, man. I told incredible bite force. Watch out. But I made him like a Gamera stand-in, but gave him like different feels from Gamera in that like he doesn't breathe fire, he can spew acid, and additionally like he doesn't fly by spinning around.
I was going to ask if he does the frisbee jet fly.
Doesn't do the frisbee. He has like a beetle-like shell that opens up with wings that come out, so he can fly from there. Nice. Then I put like a character called Amiibos took over Mexico and is basically like a giant amoeba stand-in for the Blob. we put a character called Yokozuna in Northwest America, and that's just a homage. I'm longtime wrestling fan, and when I was a kid, there was a sumo wrestler called Yokozuna that was just huge and gigantic in WWF. So he's like named after him, but more of a homage to like Attack on Titan because he would eat people, and he was a mutated human. And additionally, the other character that hit it big from that series was Ogre, which was like a Hulk stand-in, but more like Devil Hulk, if you're familiar with Marvel, and it's like a more vicious.
A Red Hulk, basically, sort of.
There is a Red Hulk. Ogre's kind of like that. I just made him much less humane than the Hulk, where he's very vicious. And what he tried to do was capture women, and I just left it as he kept them as pets because I didn't want to take it any darker than that. But it was interesting. Fans always like project onto Ogre that like, oh, he represents this or he represents that. And I'm always like, yes. Whatever makes you guys happy. So then the premise of that novel is that in order to humanity will die if they stay where they're at. So the pilot takes his mech and he tries to draw the monsters into each other's territories, knowing that the only thing that can kill them is each other. So he'll like attack one monster, run, draw it into the territory. So as that's going on, I split the story up into 3 sections where one part is him, one part is the female lead, Kate, who's one of Ogre's prisoners, but like a strong person and trying to escape. And then 1/3 of the book is following Atomic Rex. So it was fun to write third person perspective, but still like what Atomic Rex is thinking as he goes through his daily routine. He's like in his territory. He's got to check, the certain rivers and marshes around him. Then he has to go into the ocean. Each time you encounter something else to fight. So that was a lot of fun. But the deal was because it was a post-apocalyptic, I truly meant Atomic Rex to be a one and done book. But then the sales started to come in for it, and it was obvious that we had to do more. So I think we just got out book number 6 in the series, and that's not counting 3 comic book spinoffs that we've done as well. But it's been a pleasure. The fans really like it, so I'm super happy to keep writing Atomic Rex.
Yeah, like he sounds like just that backstory is really cool. The question I was next going to ask is about Atomic Rex. Is he like a kaiju that woke up, or is he like a mutant that started from the first wave? Because I always assume by the name he's some sort of mutant, possibly.
We leave it kind of vague. I keep saying we like I'm 2 people. I leave it kind of vague. And the reason I do that is because I want to some extent for the fans to fill in what he is. So I suggest that he's was a T-Rex on the island that the bomb was dropped on. But then like in one of the newer books, and this one I can say we, because I wrote this one with Andres, we put in there where like it's sort of the first time anybody sees Atomic Rex. And it is after the bombs dropped on the island, but he's already Atomic Rex. So it's kind of like, oh, is he a mutated dinosaur or is he something else? So that's something that I will explore going further into different books with him. And to be honest, I don't know the answer yet myself. So the fans will find out as I do and, kind of see where the story takes us in that respect.
I was going to say, it sounds like Gareth Edwards stole your idea because he retconned the whole thing where Godzilla doesn't get like mutated by the blast. It's like, no, he was already there and we just nuked him. And that made him mad, like in the legendary ones. Even then, he doesn't get mad about it, but still, like, And I was just thinking about, I was like, Atomic Rex has been around longer than the 2014 movie, so.
Yeah. I think the first one came out in 2013, I want to say. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it came up before then. Yes.
Yeah. I'm pretty positive because I saw the Atomic Rex drawing in like 2010, so yeah. I'm pretty sure it had to in that case because I remember seeing it. Yeah. So with your creation of like your monsters, so like you kind of got into a little bit like Amoebus is like an amoeba, or like related to the blob. And then you got your sumo wrestler guy is the mutant human, which I thought that was actually really cool too. The last time I saw somebody do that was in a video game called War of the Monsters.
Oh yes, remember that game well. Yeah.
Yeah, Kinetoclops, like the electric looking dude. He's the security guard, the power plant. It gets mutated by the electricity from the UFO. Yeah, so that was the last time I remember in fiction anyway. Somebody did that where like it was like a human that became a monster. Kind of.
And I wanted Yokozuna was fun to play with too because he was a human that became a monster. In that it led for my main protagonist Chris to feel like a special type of hatred towards him because Chris knows that like Yokozuna's mind was affected too, so he's not really in control of what he's doing. But he also sees it as like if this person was able to maintain any kind of semblance, they could have been the hero that I lacked the power to be because Yokozuna is able to go toe to toe with the other monsters. But instead of becoming a hero, became like person who devours people. So it's almost like it made Chris like feel extra hatred toward this character. This is a fun concept to play with in the story.
Yeah, very much a he who fights monsters.
Exactly.
Tale to that. Yeah, really like those. Big fan of that trope setup. Honestly.
Yeah, it was a really cool setup. And what's your future plans you're going to do for, like, I guess, like a upcoming book or the next installment for Atomic Rex?
Well, Atomic Rex, ever since I got through the second book, which is a direct sequel, it was like, what else am I going to do with Atomic Rex? So one thing was the third Atomic Rex actually works functionally as the second Chimera book as well, because I really wanted to do another Chimera book. And at the time, I'm eternally grateful to working with Severed Press, but they just wanted more Atomic Rex stuff. So I was like, okay, well, can I do a crossover with Chimera? And they were like, oh yeah, sure. And that then ended up like helping with back sales for Chimera too, because people went back and read that book. So from that point on, though, I was like, I don't know what else I wanted to do with the character, but I knew that he was popular enough that he was still drawing eyes to him. So I thought, well, what if I can use Atomic Rex to help draw attention to other characters that aren't mine that belong to either friends of mine or other creators that I'm interested in by doing like crossover stories with them. So the first one we did was with Nick. I'm pretty sure you knew the guy at least. The late great Chris Martinez.
Yes, I've heard of him. Never got to meet him, unfortunately.
Fantastic guy. Did the Night of the Fire Beast. So he and I did a short comic crossing over Atomic Rex with the Fire Beast, and that was a lot of fun. From there, I did the one with Frank that you know about. So we got the first part of that graphic novel out, and then the other guys in the team are having some issues. It's not mine to go into, but we hope to get it out soon. Okay. So I know a lot of fans are asking about that. And then from there, I had a lot of fans saying to me, like, hey, you got to have Atomic Rex fight Growl. I'm pretty sure I said that right. And at the time, I wasn't sure who it was, but I looked it up, and it's Richard Mollenhauer's online comic. Where are you guys familiar with that or no?
I've unfortunately no.
For sort of future reference, it's a very cool comic, and Ricky is a super fun guy. So like, if you'd like, I'd be happy to introduce you guys to him.
I've heard the name around, but I don't remember anything about it.
Gurel is kind of like a kaiju who lives in an arena and has Doomsday, like Superman, Doomsday monster like look to him, and he is also addicted to a substance on this planet, like a drug addict, and they basically use it to keep him fighting because he's sentient. Anyway, it seemed like an excellent opportunity to do a crossover, since like I had fans reaching out to me, and Ricky had a few reach out to him too, saying you got to have Growl fight Atomic Rex, like who would win? So I didn't know Ricky at the time, but I reached out to him, was like, hey, I kind of keep getting this from fans, would you be interested? And he was, and thankfully, like we hit it off very well. Our two writing styles worked well together. So Ricky and I did that, and then it worked out well enough and was doing well enough that I said, hey man, Chimera is actually my favorite character. Can we do crossover there too? And he's like, yeah, sure. So we did that one, and then it was like, I like kind of doing this, like using Atomic Rex to draw attention to other people's projects as well. So we next up was the crossover with Andres and his Bravura character. So Andres had written Andres Perez, just in case some people know, had written an anthology about his Draco Azul character, but he introduced a new sort of like Mad Max as a robot type character called Bravura, and we were able to put that one like directly into the Atomic Rex universe as well. And it was really fun to write with Andres because he's hyper focused on detail. So he was a really good writing mate for me to go back and forth. And one thing for anybody who's listening who wants to be a writer, and I say this all the time, you've got to be open to positive criticism. And that's one thing that Andres and I are both very good. Like, we're friends with each other, but we're not going to say to the other one that, just tell somebody it's good if we think it could be improved upon, and take it knowing that, like, he's not trying to take a dump on me. He's trying to be my friend and say that, and he knows vice versa. So we felt like that really helped. And then I'd wanted to work with William Kearney, who does the Crooked Lore stories, another online comic, for a while, because he has this character called Augustine, who's sort of like Mxyzptlk from Superman, where he's pretty much all powerful and can do whatever. And that was an interesting dynamic I wanted to play with. Well, what if Atomic Rex came across this character who could warp reality around him? And it allowed us to do like a real horror-based story, which we've done like sci-fi based, but not horror-based yet. So that was there. Now, to finally answer your question, Nick, I'm sorry it took so long. The next story with Atomic Rex will feature a crossover with two guys I'm very big fans of and very good friends with, in Alan O.W. Barnes and Tim Price's Big in Japan. Fantastic two-set novel, if you guys haven't read them yet. Very cathartic in a way, I guess, because it's kind of like a character study of a guy who went through a lot of struggles, and one of the writers there did. He makes no bones about it. So if can read the book for yourselves to get a look into his life. But it was a very exciting opportunity. So Tim is giving us his blessing on that. He's just kind of like feels like he's moved on with the project, but is excited. But Alan, who does tremendous art, he did the covers for like the Atomic Rex versus the Things, kind of like Mad Magazine story short that we did, and he did the cover for the Bravura crossover. We'll be doing all the interior artwork for that book, so we'll have a ton of interior artwork. We've already got the story mapped out. We are going to start hitting it in January. That's the plan right now.
Sweet. Yeah, it sounds like we got some really cool content coming out pretty soon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got a lot more stuff too.
Like always, just surprises coming out.
Yeah.
And I heard about the crossover with you and Andreas were doing. He mentioned a little bit about it, and then I think I saw the cover for it. I think.
Probably. It's out now. Like, I have my author page up. If you just type in Matthew Dennion Amazon author page, it'll be there. Because that one actually takes place before Will's. But that is out, and the newest one is Atomic Rex. There was a Crooked Man, and Atomic Rex Big in Japan. Look for it like spring 2023.
Sweet. Yeah, it's gonna be great. I'll put the links for your Amazon page and everything in the.
Greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh yeah, of course. You want to have you got a question, Daniel?
Honestly, he kind of hit a few of them already. So, honestly, I guess it's running away. It's leaving my mind as we speak. Hold on. I guess the biggest question I have for a lot of authors, honestly, just kind of in general, is when you're starting a whole new story or looking, do you generally look for the plot lines, the ideas? Are you trying to just mix and match as you go, or is it something like it just kind of hits you and you're like, wait a minute?
Yeah, for me it works there two ways. Yeah, like you said, it'll just kind of like hit me in most cases. So a couple books, like the new like horror series I've done for Raventail with like Agent 666, The Final Host. Those two books came from a challenge that on Facebook myself and William Kearney and a couple other authors were doing, where it's like, hey, let's see who can make the the best idea for like a horror crossover. So we all posted different ones leading up to Halloween, and I had two that I had really liked. So Agent 666, a very, very brief explanation of it was my one idea was like, it'd be cool. What if we had Hellboy 3 from Guillermo del Toro, but in it, his wife's brother, who's thinks she killed when she activated her powers, lived in the same town as Pumpkinhead. And they go back there to have the baby, and the brother sends Pumpkinhead out to kill him. And then Hellboy's faced with this idea of, I've got to kill my wife's brother that she thought she killed to save my family. And I twisted it up some from there for Agent 666. It wasn't that straight on, but it was like a good plot. And then the final host was kind of based off this idea. I said another cool story I'd like to see is you're familiar with I'm going to just say this, the short film Giant Warrior God Appears Over Tokyo. It's sort of like a dry run for Shin Godzilla.
Like the big skeleton looking dude.
Yeah, so like gold, and they have like weird.
Yes.
So I thought that would be cool if like they were in attacking Earth at the same time Shin Godzilla appeared, and what would happen. So that was like the other premise I did. Ironically, about a week after doing that project, I was reached out to by Raventail. They said, "Hey, we're looking for to expand our horror wing, and we want creature features." And when we looked it up, you're like one of the top people to come up. They said, "Do you have any ideas?" And I said, maybe. Like I went back and kind of rehashed those ideas into which Agent 666 and the final host. So I took like the bare bones of those ideas and twisted them up. Now, the other answer to your question would be, and this is for people who, like you said, like a Stephen King who wants to be a writer and get paid for writing, is sometimes this happens, where Raventail then said to me, "Hey, those are great. We want sea monster stories focused on a shark somehow." So I was like, okay, see what I can do. And that's where like the Project Carcharodon series came from. So that can happen too. Like sometimes it's not even just like an idea hits you. It's if you're working for a publisher and they want to hit a specific demographic or a specific plot line, they'll kind of give you something to go from there.
Nice. Interesting. Okay. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, man.
Sure.
Really appreciate it. Any last questions from you, Nick?
Yeah, actually, this was actually a question I was going to ask you a while back, which was, do you remember when the Kaiju Assault, not Kaiju Combat, there we go. Colossal Kaiju Combat was kind of a thing. Do you remember that?
I do, yes. Yeah.
Did you ever submit Atomic Rex into that?
I did not. He is in a trading card game, the same one that Andre's characters are in.
Right. Kaiju Assault.
Kaiju Assault. Thank you. Yeah, he's in that one. I did not. I believe that the other one that kind of fell apart was starting to fall apart when Atomic Rex came out, and like I think it was Chris Martinez who suggested to me, stay away from that one. So we didn't do that one. But luckily, the Kaiju Assault came along. So I've got like 2 sets of characters in that one, which is super fun, and those guys are super nice. It was a blast to work with them.
Yeah, I've worked for them for a good while now. I started working with them back when I was in high school, back when they did the kind of Toho inspired like Kaiju stuff.
Right.
Where they started having the other IPs in there. Like I did the card artwork for a good while. I did Rock.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, the awesome picture I have of Atomic Rex fighting Chimera is hanging up behind me.
Yeah. The thing I was trying to remember was I can't remember if I did. So one year I remember Zach did Atomic Rex, I think, for Kaiju Assault, but weirdly I feel like it's weird. Like I remember I had the sketch, and like I did one that was for the game. I don't know if I don't know if you ever saw it or not. Like that's why I was like I was gonna bring it up. I was gonna ask you like do you have the original like Kaiju Assault card of Atomic Rex?
I do. I don't have them readily available, but I do have the entire pack still. So I have 2 sets to be specific. One set that my kids play with that is not going to live much longer, and the other set that I keep just like for display. But I do have all of the artwork. You probably can't see it because of the way my lighting is, but I do have the one you did is definitely up on the wall behind me. with tons of other fan art I get sent of Atomic Rex, which is I always appreciate, by the way. If anybody wants to send it to me, I'd be happy to put it up on my Facebook page. So
nice.
Yeah, this is good stuff. And yeah, it was your friend was right about the whole colossal kaiju combat. I mean, we all remember how that went.
Yeah, I was glad I dodged that bullet.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, that's a story for another day, Daniel. But you would
Yes.
love it. It's pretty funny. But yes, yeah. My next thing I was gonna just ask real quick is so for have you ever written like so you did Atomic Rex, you did Chimera. Have you ever thought about branching out like if you were to do another subject, like let's say like a different like like either like genre, like which one would you go? Like if you decide to.
Oh yeah, totally. I branched out a little bit with like I have my Raptor line, which is sort of like and I'll give you a teaser of something new I'm working on too. A Raptor line, which is sort of like a high tech superhero, where I've done some books with him. I would love to do noir stories. Like Andres, I'm a gigantic noir fan. It's just a matter of like me getting up the confidence and making sure I can write that part well. Like one thing that I do know my fans enjoy currently is they'll say, Matt, I always like reading the way you write kaiju fights. They're so bloody, like they make me think about how it would be like. So I'm like, okay, I got that part down. And I've been trying to do more character study books like Agent 666 to build up to that, because a noir story is not going to be super action packed like my current line is. It'd have to be much more like that one. I really probably would have to do an outline, even me, and plot it out to make sure like that the mystery aspect of it makes sense going forward. So that is on my radar to do at some point once I feel comfortable with it. Honestly, probably when I retire from teaching, because that was going to take quite a bit more time. So noir would be it. I know you're hoping for romance. I know you don't want to hear me say a romance novel.
The kaiju love story.
Yeah. My
Specifically,
wife
kaiju romance.
Yeah. Oh God. Oh, that is it. Listen. God bless people who like that genre. I just never like it. Never clicked for me. Okay, if it's your thing, go ahead, man. Do your thing. But my wife would say for me not to do romance. She'd say just don't. Okay, just stay away.
Well, I was gonna say that the final frontier for you to do is kaiju noir. Now
there we go. Andres and I did do one short comic that was like a noir story. We did it sort of little tongue in cheek because Draco Azul and Atomic Rex are both like in trench coats and investigating a murder type of thing. So that one was really fun to do, is like to dip our toes in the water. But it's to do a full-on novel, I'd really have to get better at my craft or get better at doing that specific genre and work my way up to it. So it's on my radar to do though at some point.
When you said Atomic Rex, Draco Azul in a trench coat, the first thing I thought of was like, I could picture Draco Azul perfectly, but Atomic Rex. Do you remember the Super Mario Brothers movie?
Yes, I do. It was
Goombas. It got the T-Rex head. It's like really small. Trench coat.
Yep.
I pictured like one of those things standing next to Draco Azul, and I was like.
Thankfully, Frank Carr did the artwork for it, and it comes off better than that. But it's still definitely tongue in cheek, And if you read through it, you'll notice other kaiju from our friends pop up in the background or as side characters and stuff. Chris Martinez's character being one of them. But I'll let the fans go back and see who else they can find in the back, because Frank put like a lot of little Easter eggs in there, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the guy who's dealing out sushi in the story is Young Gary. I'm sure.
Right, yeah, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Every vehicle that's in the background is from a kaiju movie, pretty much. If you'd like to take a close look at it, Frank did a fantastic job with because we told him, like, dude, we kind of want this to be like kind of funny, so feel free to have some fun with it. He's like, okay, and he did. So.
I would die laughing if you had like a taxi that looks like Zegra's ship with like the gumballs and stuff. Like it looks like just a regular taxi. Then when you walk into it, all the gumballs light up.
You'll find some funny Easter eggs in there. But that is 100% Frank
saw
Clark. 100% Frank. He did a fantastic job.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really interesting. You got one more question, Daniel?
No, that was kind of it. For me, unfortunately. Unless you've got anything else you just want to share.
Yeah, can I tell you about 2 projects I have upcoming?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes.
All right, so this will be breaking news. This hasn't gone anywhere else yet, really. Maybe the one has. So first of all, my brother Mark, who's also an author and I think a better author than me, honestly, has written a book called Whale Shark, which I told him was a dumb name because there's already a whale shark that is basically a giant filter feeder. But he told me I don't know what I was talking about. So he wrote a book. It's been doing fantastic in sales as a horror story for Raventail. And my Project Carcharodon series, which is kind of like a King Shark type character from DC, has been doing well too. So we had a meeting with the editor. He said these are both doing well. You guys have to write a book together. So very soon in next year too, Mark and I will have like a whale shark versus Carcharodon book coming out that I'm excited about. I'm very excited too about though. Unfortunately, like the timing for this is bad, given the recent passing of Jason David Frank. But I had a request from Raventail prior to that. I need to put that out there prior to Jason David Frank's passing. If I'd be interested in doing something a little more along the lines of Power Rangers ish. So I said I can, but I wanted to do differently than Power Rangers. Not that I don't love Power Rangers, but that I said like the visual aspect of that is kind of what adds to its charm. So I have to do it differently. So I suggested was I'd like to do a story where teenagers are given abilities, but they're based on the world's 5 major religions. So we get like a hero from a Christian background, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, and Buddhist, and they all have to kind of decide why they were given these abilities when monsters are attacking. And the thing that gave them their abilities also explains to them that I'm giving you this power, but it's your belief in your faith that will save people's souls. But then when they come across each other, they're like, well, he told me that was my belief in like my Buddhist faith that is going to make the difference. But he told you it's your belief in the Islamic faith. So I did try to cast every religion in the most positive light, which is interesting for me to do like a lot of research and to people too. Like again, talking about being a writer, Daniel, do your homework, okay? So you have to. In this case, I not only like looked up information online. Like I talked to a Muslim cleric online who gave me like some very good insight into what it means to him to be a Muslim and Muslim customs and stuff like that. The same with the Buddhist monk I spoke to. He was extremely happy to speak to me and give me information. So I try to kiss them all like in a interesting light, and it'll be a fun journey I think for these characters because we decided on like a 3-book arc for them where they're going to explore what it means for themselves to excel in their religion and what it means to interact with other people and how that affects these attacks that are occurring, these like monsters like attacks. So that book will be called Kaiju Faithful, and that might be out as early as next week. So if you guys can keep an eye out for that. I've had like the people I have spoken to seem to have interest in the concept because it involves different religions and interacting and trying to portray the positive aspects in particular of each religion. So
that is like awesomely fascinating. Yeah, I'm gonna keep
thank you
for it, honestly. Yeah, and it's well, as you were saying, writers doing their homework and stuff. I mean, Nickel, I've got 3 bookshelves worth of reference material, and that's just in this room. And it's one of just a small aside there on that, because I was talking to somebody else about it. When we want to incorporate stuff, or at least when I do, when I try to incorporate our world into mine. So I'm actually more high fantasy. I deal with complete recreated worlds, magic systems, all that jazz. And it's one of those things of, really diving into, like you said, don't stick with your preconceptions of what you think anything is like. For it, as a writer, it is our responsibilities, especially to deep dive as much as we can, and find one of my favorite things personally is why I love fantasy so much is being able to explore our own worlds, religions, and getting to adapt in some manner or be influenced by the rules of life that they have, the beliefs that they have, the stories or allegories that they use, and whatnot for it. And, being able to translate that into, fantastical means and stuff just helps broaden your audience, I think. Just giving them, when they're like, where did you come up with this? And we're like, oh, I looked into this for all of for 2 months straight.
You're absolutely right. I was going to say, like, I'm sorry to cut you off. By the way, you finished. I didn't mean to cut you off. Like when I wrote, I would tell people to, if you know something interesting in particular, and you can incorporate it into your writing, put it in there. So, as an example, like I keep going back to me being a teacher. When I wrote my first book, Chimera: Scourge of the Gods, the premise of it is that there's a giant monster that needs to be trained to stop the ancient gods from sending monsters to attack us. And they get a guy who works with students with autism because he's trained in applied behavior analysis. So what that is a very short definition of it, but like you can look at the book later. That anybody does something because you're reinforced for it in some way. So like when I'm at school, like I'll set up, it's sort of like the behavioral momentum thing. Hey, we're going to do this and then you're going to earn this, because we all do, right? We don't go to work for free. We all work to get paid, and the concept is very basic. Like the idea really clicked for me when I took my kids to a circus that aren't around anymore. And I saw a line tamer and I was like, he's doing the same thing I would do, just like on a more concrete level, being that like holds up a treat, line does a trick, line gets a treat. So people seem to kind of take to that. And I did go into a little bit more like, not make it super scientific, but like try to break down the concept into layman's terms. And then when I did Operation Rock, it was based off of a concept called brain-based learning, which means that there's a concept with more data behind it too. So I'm not just making this stuff up, that parts of your brain are like muscles. So, like if you work certain muscles every day, they're strong. And if you don't, they're not so strong. So in this case, it was the idea of accessing different aspects of brains and education to build them up. So for instance, when we're taught algebra, it's kind of like the first time that it's not really for us to figure out like what number's missing. Algebra is problem solving. And then without realizing it, we can take it and put it in other aspects of our lives. Like, I know that I have this and I have this, but what am I missing in between? And it's the concepts of algebra that build to that. So I was able to incorporate that into Operation Rock. But in that case, I made it where like these people were picked to sync with rocks because they were pilots. But in truth, it's their ability to build interpersonal relationships that make them stronger. But because that's a section of their brain that they don't utilize a lot, it's really weak for them, and they had to kind of build it up. So that was like a long about way to say what you're saying, Daniel. I'm sorry to take so long with it.
No, you're fine. And it's it is one of those things that I personally have a mistake on, bringing in, especially for children with special needs or disabilities and things that just kind of make life harder. I have a little sister with Down syndrome. I've been doing events with her for since we were kids. I have a wonderful graphic novel that a writer gentleman put out based kind of on his son who had Down syndrome, and like a child with Down syndrome gets like superpowers and stuff for it. That would be a more direct use for it, like you were saying, for it. But the just to hammer it again, I guess the importance of pulling in real life, even in fantastical stuff, that is what's going to really ground your stories, no matter where they are.
Yeah, you're totally right. And that's why I wanted to do that religious Power Rangers one. I thought that would be like a lot of fun, like you said, to ground it into how it affects like this fantasy world still.
I'm really picturing a multi-religious Sailor Moon team, and it's coming out great in my head. I'm not gonna lie.
It might not be too far off now that you mention it. It would be, for instance, I can give you a very quick. I don't want to keep you guys here, but I can give you a quick backstory on it. Okay. So again, more homework, and it was super fun to do. So I grew up as a Catholic, so that was easy for me, and did the one Christian guy can call upon the power of Saint George the Dragon Slayer. So he's like a knight, okay? Because there's a story about a saint who killed the dragon. I was like, we're just going with that. Super cool. Then use Samson for the Jewish character because, super strong, kind of like a Hercules template. That was easy to do. Then I really didn't know as much about Buddhism, Islam, or Hinduism. So I had to do some research and I found some extremely interesting characters to give my characters the power of. So in Islam, there was a girl whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce because I will totally wreck it, but it is spelled correct in my book, okay? And the deal was that she was a companion of Muhammad, and her brother was like a warrior. Her brother was captured during a war, and she basically found this like green shawl that she put on and then said to the dudes that were hanging around, like, we're going to go kick these guys' butts and like zenith these people like all over the place, like wrecked them. So I was like, that is a great story. And she became like one of the predominant or the most highly regarded warriors at the time, and won numerous battles. So like, we're going to give that person this one's powers. For the Hindu warrior, there was a legend of a goddess who was reincarnated but didn't know that she was, and doesn't realize who she is till she gets later in life. And an interesting concept was, I'm sure you guys have seen Total Recall.
Yeah.
Okay, so she had 3 breasts like the girl in Total Recall. So I even like make a reference to that in the story because it's such a cool moment as a kid. You're like 3 breasts, and then go from there. But anyway, she wouldn't lose one.
It'll be 12.
Oh, that's exactly. She wouldn't lose the one extra breast until she found the person she falls in love with. So she happens to meet 2 of her additional teammates at the same time and doesn't realize that it's gone all of a sudden. So then she's going to fall in love with one of them. But the coolest one was the Buddhist character, because I was looking for like a character in Buddhist mythology or history that was a warrior, because for the most part Buddhists are pretty pacifistic. But there was a guy in like 1100 AD, and they called him the Giant Monk, and his name was like Benki. I'm probably mispronouncing that too, so I apologize to anybody knows that story. But his deal was, in like 1100, he was 6'9", which today would be like being 7'5", like gigantic. But it was also a highly trained warrior, and had just decided that he didn't want people with bad intentions to have weapons. So, and it's a true story. This guy would go around and challenge any bad dude he thought to a fight, with the deal being that if I won, I take all your weapons. And the guy won like over 200 fights. I was like, that is an awesome story, right? Like, this legitimate giant dude is walking around and being like,
up now.
yeah, like, you're a bad guy. I don't want you to have weapons. So let's fight. If I win, I keep your weapons. And he whooped up like 200 dudes. I was like, 100% this guy's going to be in my story. So when we talk about junior homework, sometimes it can be fun because I never knew that story. Like, this is fantastic.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, there are, and it's one of those things that it's kind of like, we going all the way back to what you just mentioned. I believe you said it was under the Hindu faith that had the goddess that was like reincarnated and doesn't know until later on in life, kind of stuff. That's like every CW supernatural television series or story. Like, that is the setup plot line to like every YA thing I have ever seen. But insert reincarnated god with successor to magic line, alchemy, shadows.
Doesn't matter, right? It's Buffy, right? Buffy is the next player.
And
Adventure Time, right? Finn and Jake are just reincarnated all the time. Basically, you find out by the end. It's it's a fantastic story device, like that. It transcends different religions or fantasies or whatever. So it's really fun to incorporate that as well.
I believe it.
And awesome. If I can give one last piece of advice to any inspiring writers, and this is the advice nobody wants to hear, and I'm still working at this. You've got to learn the grammar to being a writer and work at it. Okay, like it's the nuts and bolts. I'll often tell people like I coach sports all the time, so like I coach basketball too, and I tell people, you know what? Nobody wants to learn to play defense. It's hard and it's boring and nobody really notices when you're doing good at it, but it makes your overall game so much better, and people notice when you're not good at it. So it's the same with writing. Like if you don't focus on grammar, on punctuation, sentence structure, not making your paragraphs too long, it's hard and it's not fun to learn how to do, and it's something you're never going to be perfect at, and you're always going to have to get better at. But if you want to be a writer, continue to try to improve on it. And I can tell you, like, the more I think I know I got it, the more I realize there's a lot I haven't figured out yet. But I just keep trying with it. So
most definitely, and it is also something I've noticed when going back to the basics for stuff. Honestly, that's the best way to get through blocks.
Yeah, I agree
or
with
if
that.
if you're repeatedly running into the same issues, run-on sentences, like I said, too long of the paragraphs, everything is just losing a flow and structure to it. You got to get back to the basics for it. There is just like you said, because I definitely wanted to make sure it was there after you started the basketball analogy. No one really notices when you're doing it well.
Right.
it is one of those things of they only notice when it's bad. And we have the track record. Published books have mistakes in them, sure, but it's not, I don't think it's good for us to just accept said mistakes. I think just like you're saying, constantly pushing ourselves to be better, to evolve. And one of the best ways, because I personally am technically probably one of the worst writers that has made any money at this. All of the editors that I've worked with have just been like, man, it's good. Your stuff is cool.
Like, I'm right there with you. Don't feel bad.
But one of the best things I noticed, or one of the best comments I got back that made me really, honestly, kind of like keep the fire going, I guess, was that, one of my friends pointed out, because they've been working with me for about a year or so, and they were like, you get better the more you do it. If it is one of those things that, like, you don't want to sit through a workbook per se, then write, and get you an editor for it, get you a book through it, read it aloud, go through it. It seems like duh, but you need to do it at least a dozen times.
Yeah.
It'll feel like, but it's, it is all about, just how you present your craft. It is one of those things that when you don't do it well, and you try, I've run into several authors that are just like, I just accept that as my style now. I don't have editor, I don't run it through editor and any of this stuff. And very shortly after, they start running into sales problems.
Right.
There is a realistic way, I and many of our contemporaries at least have been looking at it, and it is definitely, like you said, we have to hammer the basics still. And I think one of the best things about that specifically is that we are at the advent of self-publishing. Like, you as a writer can take your idea, type it out, publish it to an audience of 1 to 1 million, given how Amazon likes your title, and call it a day for it. You don't have to go through anyone else. But when you add that polish, when you take the time to refine it, when we do it right the first time or so, the whole measure, was it measure twice, cut once?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Because that is absolutely a, edit multiple times, publish once.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. So much editing. You're right. Go ahead. I'm sorry. No,
that was kind of that was the end of my thought on that
yeah,
one.
I was going to say too. I know I mentioned it before too, but if you're going to be a writer, you have to be willing to accept criticism too. So the vast majority of reviews on my books, I'd say like 80, 85% of them are pretty positive. Where it's like, oh, I like Dennion, so he does this and that. Then there's like about the 15% that aren't, and of those, I'd say there's like 5% you get Dennion sucks, and I'm like, okay, well, whatever. Just gonna move past that one. But if some people do have like legitimate criticisms, don't be offended by them, but just take them to heart and realize like this is something that I can do better at. I always try to tell people like take a look in the mirror. I always try to do and think what I did well today. What can I do better with tomorrow? So I'm not like down on myself, but I can improve. It's the same thing there. That those criticisms like that are holding up a mirror. So you can look at it and you can dismiss it out of hand and not improve, or you can say, this person has a legitimate point. Like I can do better on X here. So I'm going to try to do better on X. And like you had said, Daniel, there's nothing better than I can remember like in like my third or fourth book in, a couple guys who had been reviewing me for a while, and like for the most part did like my work. But when they said, and I can really see Dennion's like sentence structure improving, I was like, yes, thank you. Like that's not typically what people want to hear. They want to hear like, oh, their story was great. I love this. But I was like, finally somebody sees that I've been working on it and there's some validation that my hard work is starting to come around to some extent.
That is always awesome, man. And yeah, awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing that too.
Oh, sure. Thank you guys for having me on today. Nick, thank you so much as well. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here and chat with you guys.
Glad to have you on, man. Glad to have you on. Yeah. Hey, real quick after we just finish recording here, do you mind staying on just for a little bit?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Sweet. So that is the end of this episode, everybody. The links to all of his books are down below in the YouTube link down below here. And you'll be able to access Atomic Rex and all of his new novels that he has right now, along with the new ones when they get released. We'll go and update it pretty soon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So
all right, man. Thank you again, Matt. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you, man. Great talking to you as well. Sorry,
thank you. I've really enjoyed myself tonight. Yeah.
Yep. So that's the Visionary Dawn podcast, everybody. We'll sign off and have a good one.
Bye.